Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Cullum. Thank you for being here. Just a little trigger warning before this one, guys, because we hit on some very sensitive topics regarding religion and culture. So I just wanted to make sure I let you know before we started. We got Heidi Luv on the show, and she is absolutely awesome. Was kind enough to share some of her experiences today that I think you're going to find very interesting. Let's get into it. Let's get freaky. Something's in your room, you can't move, you can't speak. It's a horrible feeling.
You know, you're looking out into the darkness and then you see a figure, but it's darker than the darkness.
I just get this like really creepy feeling, and I see this like shadowy, demon-looking figure in the front seat of the car.
She used to come into my room at night and stand right by my bed, and I just was petrified.
I remember I saw something fly by my bedroom window. We heard the bathroom door shut. So then we looked out my bedroom window down the hallway, and the bathroom door was wide open.
So we came around the bend and we saw eye shine. This thing stood up. I mean, it stood up. And it had high pointed ears. It had a snout, had a long arm, and it grabbed the deer.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys, I am super excited to welcome our next guest. So let's get freaky. Tonight, we have got Heidi Luv. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm here to tell you all about the Mormons. You got some out there in your area. You get the door knockers?
I think so. Yeah, we get the door.
Yes, the door knockers. Drew Misson told me they call them the door knockers.
Yeah, we just don't answer the door. We just don't answer the door.
Yeah.
We're
you got to
sure.
hide.
Yeah. So I'm super excited to hear your story. First of all, tell us about your awesome podcast and tell us about yourself.
I am Heidi Luv. Yes, that's my real name. It's not a stripper pole name. I did get asked that once. My parents were just hippies, so there it is.
Name.
It's fun.
It's a great name.
I am the podcast host of Unfiltered Rise Podcast, and I didn't even mean to be a podcast host. I accidentally fell into this, but I think it's fun and I like it, and I've always been chatty, so here I am.
Perfect for the podcasting.
Yes. I used to be a Mormon. I was Mormon for 34 years of my life. So this was most of my life. I'm 48 now. I don't care. Who knows how old I don't care.
Sure.
Age is age. Like only the good get to die young, and only the people that are blessed get to age because, we're still here. So it's good either way. Yeah. And so I am a nurse by trade. Normally that's what I do in my regular life. And I love to research weird things. And I just started doing that. And the Mormon stuff was because I was one, but the other things all kind of fell in line. And that's where I went with, and I'll explain more when I show you these pictures, like John D. And then even cabbage babies, some really weird things that I went down. And you'd be surprised how much everything is a part of everything. It's
Everything's
very
connected.
odd. Yes. And so even if you don't mean it to be, even if you think, oh, this is like a completely fringe thing over here, it would never adapt to over there. Sometimes it does. It's weird.
That's how it seems to be with the paranormal conspiracies. It does all seem to be connected. Like this is mainly a paranormal show. We talk paranormal topics and experiences, but I don't think you can do a paranormal show without looking at conspiracies as well, because it is all connected
for sure.
Everything. It's all connected.
Yes. And Mormons, who doesn't want to hear about the weird Mormons? I mean,
I'm interested to hear this. So was this something you was brought up with?
Mormon all my life. Yes. My mom and dad were not very active, kind of like the Catholics that go on Easter and Christmas. That's how my parents were. And they still drank and smoked and all that fun stuff. and it was my stepdad. When I say my dad, it's my stepdad, because he was there and my real dad was in prison. So my life is stranger than fiction. That's why I do this. Like, my dad went to prison. I had a really bad childhood. My sister married Warren Jeff's nephew, who is like the fundamentalist prophet. Yeah. So
Wow.
it's weird. And so I should have called my podcast like It's Really Weird or something, but I just didn't. And so here I am, and I've always been one to really research things. I was in debate in high school, all that stuff. So like I said, everything together combined with my upbringing, it got me here. So about age 12, I moved in with my grandmother. Now, my grandma wasn't one of these, we call them Jack Mormons. Jack Mormon means you don't go. You want to still do your thing, but you still believe, but you don't go. And so, I'd done all the things with my neighbors and got, baptized at 8 years old. You do that, and you get blessed in the church. You do that. And when you're born, and they give you a name and a blessing, and all that stuff was done. And everyone in Utah is Mormon. I'm in Utah. So this is not, when I first started going on podcasts, I thought, man, why do people want to know this stuff? It's everybody knows. And one day, Josh Monday, shout out Josh, he said, Heidi, nobody knows. This is weird.
Yeah.
And I said, oh.
Yeah, because I feel like I don't know my thoughts on what you're going to tell me now. I really don't know what's coming, but
I can't wait to show you the photos. It's going to be
wow.
so fun. But we got to lay the brickwork, right? We got to get the little path going. So then when I moved in with my grandmother, she was very devout. However, my grandfather, they got custody of me because my mom lost custody, and I became a ward of the court. And at that point, I started thinking, well, these people that I lived with, my mom and dad and even my grandpa, who I adored, but he was a biker, and my grandma was this really devout Mormon, and it didn't go good together. It was kind of a weird dichotomy. And I thought, these people don't have their stuff together over here. I think I should be like her, because she seems to have her stuff together. She is the only sane one bailing people out of jail. Okay, that's the truth of the matter. So I'm like, all right, follow this lady. Go to church every Sunday, do all the things, everything you should do. I did. And then when I got about 17, I fell in love. And it was ridiculous. I was 17. I'd never had a real, a physical relationship, none of that. And this guy is 25 and a half. And so we got married, because you cannot be a Mormon and not get married if you start fooling around. That's not good. And I wasn't pregnant. I wasn't any of that. But at that time, I said, you have to join the church, because this is so important to me. I mean, my whole life, I've just been indoctrinated that, I have to go to the temple to get married. And now I can't, because you're a Catholic. And he said, okay, I'll do it for you. And I said, cool. Okay. Cause my grandma is going to flip out. If not, this lady is serious. So we did. You have to wait. You can't just go and say, okay, I'll do it, and then get married tomorrow. No. There's a laundry list of things. So you have to become a member. You have to pay your tithing for a year. You have to be in the church a year. He had to get his priesthoods. He had all this work to do. And eventually the day came where we were going to get married in the temple. We were already married, of course, but by now I'm pregnant, because it's been like a year and a half, and I'm like 8.5 months pregnant at this point, and I am just ready to have this baby, pretty much. And I went through it in 1996, and I was excited. All my life I heard, oh, you go to the temple, it's the best day ever, you're gonna go, and it's like being in heaven. And I was like, man, I want to do that, So I was excited. I was scared, because there's certain rituals and things that no one will talk to you about. Not even your mother, no one. And that you get this weird outfit because you have to get it before you go. And you get new underwear, and about them because you got to bring them with. And you're going to go through this whole thing in the temple, but you don't know what it is. So you're there with your really expensive clothes that you can only buy at the church. Yeah, that's fun. And you get this outfit. There's about, maybe back then in 1996, it was like $120 a piece, which back then that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the underwear were about $38 a set, because I'll show you here soon what they look like. So anyway, long story short, I go there and I'm taking out what's called my endowments. When you do this, the first time you go through for yourself. The next time you go through, and every single time after that, you go through for dead people. Dead people. And so, yeah. So your
sorry.
face was my your
what does
face
that
is
mean?
my face.
Yeah.
So so I'll explain. So you go through the first time and you do these, basically it's masonry. It's Masonic rites. I think now would be a good time for me to share my screen, because some of this is going to be better to describe to you with, like how they say the picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay.
So when you say temple as well, is that the church?
The temple is not, and it's not like the Jewish temple. You can't just walk in. The temple is a special place that you can go when you've done all the rules and all the things and you've completed all the little check off boxes. You can go inside the temple, and no one can go in, and no one's permitted to go in without their little certificate. And it's all barcoded, and they scan it at the door like a pass, and they check you, and it's a whole thing. If you tried to go in, like just to go in, like do an expose, they would arrest you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it like heavily guarded and protected?
I think what it is they have old, unassuming people at the front, but they have their own security. Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure there's like a panic button.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere anyways. It's like a lobby until somebody comes and gets you, because you wouldn't really know where to go. Can you see my screen okay?
I can't see any pictures.
Okay, let's
I've got
see
no
what I
pictures
need to
coming
do.
up.
Dang. Let me go back and see why. Let's see. Sometimes this happens when you go back and forth through StreamYard and that other one. So okay. I'm going to try one more time to share screen. Oh, it says you got to say it's okay.
Okay. How do I do that?
I sent you the request, and it hopefully down at the bottom, it will say share screen.
I really should know how to do this sort of thing.
You're okay. If we can't, I will just describe it. But it's pretty funny if you. So down at the bottom, participants chat, then share screen.
Oh, here we go. Yep, share screen.
Yes.
So
and then push OK.
One participant can share at a time. Multiple. Oh, it must be that one. So if I click on that,
we'll see if it does it.
Has that worked?
Let's see. I'm going to go back, and we shall try to open.
This is a let's get freaky first for me, because I've never shared a screen
Well,
before.
these are too good to miss. Okay, can you see a screen full of underwear?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh no.
Why is that not working? Okay, let me try the other. So share screen, advanced sharing options.
Advanced sharing options, I bet.
Particular can share. Host only. No, all participants. No, it's saying you should be able to do
all
it.
Participants. Okay.
Yeah, all participants.
Maybe I have to just push it one more time. We'll try it one more time before we annoy it, because we don't want to annoy everybody. Sorry, guys.
If it doesn't work, we'll have to
I see it.
Describe it.
I see it.
Oh, here we go.
Okay,
something's happening.
Underwear.
Here we go.
Okay, perfect. And let's see. There we are. I got two of them. I got to close one. There we are. Okay. These are Mormon undies. These are the magical underwear, or the Jesus jammies, or whatever you want to call them. We call them lots of fun things, and they're Masonic because they have the compass and the square on the nipples, and then on the belly button there's a sideways ruler, and also on the knee. And so these are what we wear underneath our clothes. You may not wear anything underneath your clothing, like your bra or a pair of panties. These are your underwear. And so you need a lot of pairs of them. I mean, at least 7, hopefully most people, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so this is what you have to wear every day.
Every day. And you may never take them off unless you are swimming, going to the gym, or making more Mormons, right? Because we have a lot of kids. Or showering, of course,
Can you make that picture bigger, or?
Yeah.
Does that go bigger?
Is it a thumbnail for you?
Yeah, it's like a thumbnail.
I wonder.
So I can see it quite small. If
Let's
my wife
see
walks
if
in
I
now,
can
she's
blow it
gonna
up.
think, what is going on?
Yeah, let me
Looking at,
see. I know. Can you
I'm
see
looking.
it there? Does that
No,
make it worse or bigger? Okay.
it's still only a small box that I can see.
Oh boy. All right. It might not. I don't know. Zoom is funny
Yeah,
sometimes. It makes
yeah.
it hard, but
But I've got a rough.
it's
I can
they're
see it. I
very
can see it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Ah,
then so the next one, I wished it would blow that up. I'm not sure why it does. Sometimes with Zoom, it's naughty.
yeah.
StreamYard is really easy and I usually do that one now. I started with Zoom though. And
Yeah.
then so for the next thing you have to have is you have to have these. Let's see if this works better. Not really sure why it's being silly, but
So is this above clothing that goes over the
it
underwear?
goes, no, this is your underwear and you have to
Oh,
wear this, yeah, every day. And it's not very comfortable, unfortunately. And it was quite the situation. Let's see. I'm not sure how to make it
so
bigger. I'm sorry.
is this underwear that men and women have to wear, or is it just?
Yes, men and women. And in the olden days, they used to go to your wrists and to your ankles, but now they go to your knees. And they're like a kind of a t-shirt and a boxer shorts for the people at home, or bloomers for a woman, like old-fashioned granny panties, and like a t-shirt as well. And your clothes have to be able to cover this. So no tank tops, none of that business anymore. Once you get
Wow.
married in the temple, you cannot do that ever again. This
Yeah.
is really interesting, and I'll try and zoom this as much as I can. Okay, so this is our temple clothing, and this is the men's temple clothing, and this one is the men and women together. Can you see that?
Um,
Sorta, not much.
I can't see. Can I click on the pictures?
Yeah, try. Yeah, maybe, hopefully.
Oh, where you gone?
Did it do it?
No.
No, dang it. All right.
Oh,
Well, I can describe it and we can just stop sharing because if it won't do it, it won't be as fun, you know?
yeah.
Um,
What have I
let
done?
me, no, it's not you. This is a Zoom thing. No. Unfortunately, Zoom is weird and doesn't share the whole screen.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
We're back.
so
We're back.
those outfits that we wear in the temple, if you know anything about the OTO and what they wear, it's sort of similar in a way because they have like a sideways one-breasted robe. Now we have a outfit underneath, like a dress or a shirt. The men wear a white shirt, white pants, white tie. The females wear a white dress, and then you wear these underwear underneath, and then you also get the robe that goes over one shoulder, exposing one breast with a tie, a little sash, and then you wear a veil. And the husbands wear what we call a baker's hat because it just looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy baker, you know. And then you get an apron that's green and it's made of fig leaves. And so that apron is given to you at a later point in the temple ceremony by Satan, which gets interesting. Because remember, I'm thinking I'm going to heaven. I'm going to do this for God. I'm thinking this is a super righteous thing that I'm doing to go to heaven. You can't go to the top heaven. There's 3 heavens
Yeah.
unless you have these done. And so I'm thinking, okay, we're in there and everything's happening. And I'm like looking at my grandma, like, what is going on in here? And then they're chanting around a book and this weird stuff. And you're learning all these Masonic signs, and they're exactly the same. They have 5 and we only have 3. So they cut it down and they changed the name. Like the sure sign of the lion's paw, for Mormons is the sure sign of the nail, like the nail that went in Jesus. So, but it's the same sign, it's identical. And it's the one that the presidents do a lot with the president of the church. A lot of times, if you go back and watch videos when the church members, the top presidents, go and shake the real president's hand, Thomas S. Monson did this. They did the handshake, which is not supposed to be done outside of the temple ever. So even he broke the rule. And he's the prophet, seer, and revelator, So, I mean, it's all a big club, and I guess I used to be in it, but I didn't know any of this stuff was Masonic. I didn't even know what a Mason was. I just knew everybody in Utah goes to the temple. My grandma did, and my great grandma did, and everybody, and even we talked about DNA before. My DNA says Mormon settler.
Oh, wow.
Mormon settlers. Yes.
So it's in the DNA.
That's how bad. Yeah. It's in my DNA. I can't even get away from it no matter what I do. So I stayed in for years and years after that. I was really uncomfortable in the temple. I didn't like it. Once you get past all this weird, it's a 2-hour thing. If I tell you everything, we'll be here all day. But it's the Masonic signs that you learn, the handshakes, and then you get a new name. You get new underwear. You go through preparatory, initiatory, which is where you get the underwear and stuff beforehand. When I went, you had a poncho on and you're naked, and that's all. And then they come in and bless and you're alone in like a little room with like a bench, but it's like this cold, tiley kind of bench. And I'm thinking, man, this building's so nice. Like, why does this bench suck so bad? It's an altar. I found that out later. And so my naked ass is on an altar, and I'm sitting there waiting for somebody to bless my sinews. And anybody that's heard of OTO stuff, they call it those things as well. So they come in, and I said to the lady, hey, why are you in here? And she says, I'm here to give you your blessing. And I said, no, that's not going to work. You better go get the guy, because you can't do a blessing because you're a woman, and women can't hold the priesthood. And she says, oh, you're silly. It's different in the temple. And I looked at my grandma, and she's like, it's fine. It's different in the temple. And I was like, this is so weird, because nowhere else in the whole world you can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
And my grandma was just like, oh, it's fine, And so I couldn't understand it, but I just went ahead. And I was so indoctrinated that I definitely wanted, even if I had to be naked in a room with a man, I was down. I didn't care.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was a ridiculous idiot or anything. I think you're just so indoctrinated that you just are like, well, this is what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
People ask me all the time, like, you seem very smart. Like, why, how did this happen? And I'm like, you don't understand. Your whole family is there. Your whole family. And I mean, it's kind of like people that fall into racism or Ku Klux Klan stuff or whatever else bad, even probably some of these elites that we see. I'm sure some of their kids don't want to do that stuff, but they do, and it's like, well, what do you do about it? And so what
you're brought up into, I mean, you just, that's what's normal, that's what you've experienced your whole life and seen. And I can understand.
And then my great grandma was there, and she was really funny. She said, well, you should be happy I had to get naked in a tub and be scrubbed down. And I thought, oh boy, I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm sitting there worrying like, oh my gosh, is that going to happen next? Because nobody tells you anything. So then I was nervous at this point. I'm like, holy crap, I hope that's not coming around the corner. And so it wasn't. Nowadays, you don't even get naked, because they had so many problems and complaints with people feeling as uncomfortable as I did.
Yeah.
This is straight out the gate. This is the first thing that happens to you. You get naked and you're like, I want to go home. Like, I don't like this. And so I think enough people got together and said, nah, we shouldn't do this anymore. So they changed it. Now you wear like a baptism jumper, like a zip up. And so you're not naked anymore, and that's great. But also think about it. These are the things that were given to us. These are the Masonic keys that are the true Masonry. If you look up quotes from the church, they say, yeah, we do Masonic things, but we have the true Masonry. So obviously, they feel like this is a good thing and shouldn't be changed, but then they change it because people complained. Like, wait, I thought this was from God, just straight down to the prophet, because that's what they say. Yeah. They say they believe in that. They believe in direct revelation. And so I don't know. The only people that didn't change it were the fundies, the fundamentalist Mormons that are polygamists. And so really they practice more true Mormon stuff than anybody. I mean, because they didn't change anything. and they refuse to. And in a way, I mean, it's bad, but like, I respect it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but anyway, I get it. I mean, like, I understand why they didn't change it, you know? And so here we go. And so I get dressed and all that, like I told you, in all those funny clothes, and we were out there. And this is like a story about the Garden of Eden. Now, when my grandma went through, this was a play, and this took like 3 or 4 hours. Now, when I'm going through, it's a movie. And you can go to a play if you want to, but it takes a long time. So most people don't. And so now it's all changed because of 2020. So it's even, I don't even know if they do what they call a live session anymore, which is a play. And so they do this whole thing. They talk about the creation story. They talk about Adam and Eve. But the funny thing is they have some little differences. They don't believe in the Trinity. They believe in 3 separate beings. The Holy Spirit is a whole different thing than Jesus, is a whole different thing than God. And they call God Elohim, which is a title, not a name. I found that out later. I didn't know anything then. And so they also believe that Lucifer is their fallen brother, that Lucifer was our brother. So they also believe that we lived a life before now, before we came to earth, that we all lived with God up in the heavens, and that you chose your problems in life. You chose your struggles. You chose your mother and father, everything. You already were a spirit that lived with God, and you chose all these things. And so it's called the premortal existence. And so you're just up there waiting to be brought down by your earthly parents, which is why they push having so many children. They say, well, your children are up there waiting for you to have us. So you got to keep having babies. Like, I guess indefinitely. I mean, eventually some wise people say, well, that's enough, but some people don't. Some people are having like
average number? What's the average?
Yep.
6.
6. And we have 6. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. 6 kids. Yeah. Yes. And some I've seen, parents have up to 12 to 14 kids.
Oh, man.
Just so many kids.
Wow.
And they usually, oh, it's too many. It's the situation. There's just no way. 6 is even really hard, and they're far apart.
Imagine.
Yeah. I don't understand why they push it so hard, because then a lot of times the parents that do have a lot of kids, they don't have a lot of money, and then the church has to help them and everything, and it's like a perpetual cycle. So I don't think it's a great idea, but whatever. So you're there, you find out about the spirit babies and all this, and then you find out, they get chucked out of the garden. That part's normal. And then when you get to the part where you're given your apron, because the whole reason why you have to put it on is it's like the fig leaves. But Adam's up praying, and he used to say Pele-el, which the translation is a little weird. If you go back into the Latin and different things, people argue about it. But anyway, it became kind of controversial. So they started saying, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth," instead. So you do this little thing, and then Satan comes. Now he is praying out to God, but who answers? Satan. And he says, "Hey, Adam, you're kind of naked. You should put this on. This is some fig leaves." And so we stand, because the guy that's in charge of the whole ceremony says, "Please stand and put on your aprons." Now, why are we doing what the devil says?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that guy, he's representing the devil.
Satan. Mm-hmm. Oh, he says, yeah. And he says his apron, because his apron is black. And he says, "What is that you have?" And he says, "This is a example of my power and priesthoods." So like, it's really dramatic. It's like a whole play. You can Google this, but I don't know if it's still on you. It's actually used to be on YouTube, but I don't know if they keep taking it down. There was a big, so some guy went in and filmed this all with the special Google glasses. This is great.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
His name was Noah. And there was a big scandal about it. And I remember when it happened, I was like, holy crap, this guy's going to get murdered. And they didn't know who he was at first, but they know, everybody knows now. But anyway, it's all out. And they tried to have it removed, but it didn't infringe on any copyright laws. So
it's still on there.
Yeah, it was. I think it may still be, but then the church was like, we will sue you. And they are rich. So I don't know whatever ended up happening.
What happened to the guy?
So nothing. He's okay. But I mean, it was quite the scandal.
Yeah.
So it took them years. It took them years to find out. So it was already water under the bridge by the time they figured out who it was. And so it was a scandal. Yeah. If you want to look at it, new name Noah, that scandal was pretty funny. So I do believe these ceremonies, if you put in LDS ceremony in TikTok, it's a treasure trove. People can look and see all this stuff. So after that, you're going to go and you've got all this little Adam and Eve story and all this stuff. And then you're going to go through to heaven, to the veil. Quite literally, it's a large curtain and it's beautiful. Like everything's really overdone. And you put your hand through this curtain because you have to know the signs and symbols to get past the angels and sentinels that guard heaven. So you have to know how to get by. And so this is why we have the Masonic handshakes. And so you stick your hand through a compass and square cutout. It's like cut like that or like this to do these little symbols with the guy around, the other side, and he's pretend God. And then you get your new name and you tell him your new name. And first your husband goes through and he tells the guy, but he never tells you. And then you go through, but you don't give your name to God because women are only saved by the power of the priesthood through their husband. So I give my name to my husband, not to God. And so he gets to know mine, but I never get to know his. I never knew my husband's. And so you never repeat it again.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very patriarchal society. Everything is. I mean, a 12-year-old boy has more power than I do as far as a blessing or any of that. So they start getting their priesthoods at 12.
Yeah.
And so you learn all this, you go through, then you go to the other side, you're in the celestial room, and the celestial room's like fake heaven. And you've kind of made it through this whole thing that's gone on, and it gets really weird, and there's chanting in circles and just weird stuff. And you're just like overwhelmed. And then you go get sealed right after that. And you kneel over an altar, you hold each other's hands. You don't wear a wedding dress. You wear the same outfit. Even if it's your first time getting married, like very first ever, you don't wear your wedding dress, and your family can't come unless they are already worthy to be there. They have to wait in a waiting room outside, if not. And so you look into these forever mirrors, the mirrors like occultists use that face each other and go on and on and on.
Yeah.
They call them forever mirrors. Yeah. And you look at each other in these mirrors. And you do this ceremony and, you say you're married, whatever. No walking down the aisle, none of that stuff. Nothing the same. And then you're done and you're married and you're like thinking like, what on earth? Like, cause it's nothing like you think of in your mind. Like, I'm going to get married as a kid, like, oh, Barbie and Ken, like, it's none of that. Yeah, no.
But before you experienced this and you're talking to your grandmother and stuff, did you have any idea that this was coming? That this was how the service was going to be? No.
Nope. Because she said it's sacred, not secret. And that's one of their favorite things to say. And then they say, you'll find out when you go through the temple. And I'm like, okay, but you're never supposed to talk about it unless you're in the temple. So even if you had a question, you'd already have to be there. And so they do give you a chance to like escape on this one part. They say, if anybody doesn't want to do this, please let them stand now and we'll have you escorted out. But you have to understand your whole family is there. Your whole family is sitting here and you're not going to leave. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone leave. It's not done. Yeah. So all this stuff that we've done that day, all of this is done now. Then they tell you, hey, you need to come back for the dead people at least once a month so that you can help get all these dead people done because they're waiting in heaven for you to do this. Well, not in heaven, like a waiting room. And so you're kind of like, all right, well, I didn't really like that. So I tried it a couple more times. And what they do is they give you a paper when you get to the temple the next time. And for that day, say Bessie White died, in whatever year she died, they'll give you that. And that's who you are for the day. You're literally taking on, they call it by proxy. So you are the proxy for them.
Wow.
And it's necromantic, right? Like that's very odd. And then they do the same thing with baptisms for the dead, but kids do those. So about the age of 12 to 15. Yeah. You go do baptisms. I did that. And they give you all these names, and they've done these kind of rituals for like Hitler, a bunch of Jewish people, Anne Frank. They've done celebrities, Barack Obama's mother, like all these dead people. They'll just go and get their names and do it without permission. And so finally the church and the Jewish church got into it because they were like, hey, cut it out with the Hitler. Hello.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, sorry, our bad. And they were like, but stop it though.
So
and
they're
then they
doing it for people that are not even in.
No, you
even
could
in
die.
the Mormon culture.
No, nope. Yep. If you die or your relative, say you're accidentally related to me somehow and you're in my genealogy, this is why Mormons are obsessed with genealogy. They actually started familysearch.org, and that whole genealogy thing dumps into Ancestry DNA. So they don't outright own it, but they kind of do. I mean, it's all of their stuff. It goes right into. So they were the ones that kind of started up on that. They're very, I would say, on the cutting edge of things when it comes to like technology, like how you can't buy your underwear unless you have a barcode and they scan it and it links to your photo, kind of like a library card. Like they are making sure, and they're on the top of their game. And so with the dead people thing, if like your great grandpa was my great grandpa and I'm Mormon, I'm going to do it. And I don't really care how you feel about it. Like I'm going to do it. So they do all the time. And so it's kind of weird that, they don't have any, but they say, oh, well, they could still say no in heaven. Not heaven, but this waiting room. Right. And okay, that's fine. But also kind of weird that this is all going on. Because remember, the only time you do it for an alive person is once ever. Then you're going back multiple times in a month, 2 to 10 times to do dead people, dead people, dead people, dead people. Well, this is what led me into like a bunch of study on this when I got out, because I wanted to know why. What did I do? Because I had a lot of weird stuff when I got out. I was always getting kind of attacked. Not well, I was sick a lot. I already had cancer by the time I was 37.
Oh, man.
I mean, I had thyroid cancer, had to have it completely removed. I had tons of medical problems, like all this stuff. And we've had a lot of like accidental deaths in our family, all this stuff. So I wanted to know how to break generational curses. And I was studying Derek Prince a lot. He's great on YouTube. He's he's passed away now, but he's great. He can be legalistic, but whatever, throw that part out. He's still great. And he talks about deliverance and these things. And so I wanted to know how to get out of this situation, or like John Ramirez, he talks about it too. And so I started researching and I was like, well, what are they doing in there? And then my husband at the same time, I had met him and we were boyfriend, girlfriend. And I had mentioned the church maybe once or twice. And he said, I'll never go to that church. And he was raised in it, but he was smarter than me. You redheads are smart like that. He was 16 and he said, this is crap. I'm not doing this. He was like, no, it's creepy. I'm not doing any of it. So he left the church early on and he didn't ever do any of this stuff that I'm describing to you. He got out and didn't have anything to do with it. So when I said, oh, hey, we should think about it, he said, why don't you watch this first? And he sits me in front of the thing and puts in YouTube. He puts on a Masonic ceremony and I'm watching it. And I said, hey, they shouldn't have this on there. This is like temple stuff. And he goes, yeah, I know. Why is it like temple stuff? It's masonry. And I said, I don't know. And he's like, yeah, well, you should, because it's your history. If you're going to go do this stuff, you should probably know what you're doing,
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know any of it. And so he helped me like open my eyes to say, okay, I need to check this out, you know? And when you find out about the necromancy stuff, it led me down the road with like John Dee and Abraxas and all this weird stuff because Joseph Smith was a shady character. And I wish I could show you the occult. There's some occult things that he owned, including a Jupiter talisman. He wore a Jupiter talisman. He had sigils that were in a treasure bag, and they had calling downs that was Enochian for sure. And I was like, well, what is this? And I didn't even know I didn't know what Enochian, I didn't know any of that. I knew who Enoch was, but I didn't know this other stuff. And I started researching it, and lo and behold, it led me to John Dee. And I was like, why are we doing stuff? This is an occultist. He's like an occult. He's like the father of the occult, like way more important than Aleister Crowley. People don't know that, but everything that Crowley had, he took from John Dee and other people and just sampled and made his own. And so he's older by far, 1500s. He was Queen Elizabeth I. He was like not her sorcerer or astrologist per se, but he counseled her a lot because he wasn't a true member of the court. So when I found that out, I was shocked.
A little bit more about who John Dee is. So for the listeners that might not know, and for me as well, I've heard that name, but I'm not
sure.
That's okay. A lot about
John Dee is the original 007. John Dee was born in, I believe, 1527 off the top of my head. He was the father of the occult, to be quite honest. Most people don't know that, but this book, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, and it's Enochian Magic and the Occult Roots of the Modern World by Jason Louv, Louv. He's really good. This is a really good breakdown. It's dry. I'm not going to tell you it's amazing. I don't know how it wouldn't be. It's occult. He's an occultist. Yeah. And when I started studying this stuff, I felt really odd about it because I'm a Christian. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really want to study that. And I kept feeling prompted to like, okay, keep going. And I was like, oh man, this is scary stuff. You know, I don't know how I feel about this. And so I really kept praying about it. I really felt like it would tie into something. I didn't know what. And sure enough, it did, because John Dee did 8 years of what they call the Enochian workings. And he and his partner, Edward Kelly, he channeled things through Edward Kelly because he was very smart and he couldn't release his faculties enough to like channel. He never could. He was super smart mathematician guy. He was also like into cartography. He actually is the inventor of One World Order. That was and actually for you, John Dee, Great Britain was the place he was trying to unite completely. And so he was very, partial to Elizabeth, and he stayed in her court, but not part of her court for many, many years of his life in service to her. He also was the first person to ever think of a public library. He was the biggest owner of all books at that time in Great Britain. People would go to him to borrow. Yes, he
had all the knowledge,
critical.
All the power.
Yes, and he would only sleep 4 hours a day so he could study all the rest of the hours.
Like me.
He's a huge mathematician. Yes. I know, right? You get into it and then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So he didn't mean to be occultic. He actually really loved God and he thought he was channeling angels from God. But at some point, they're writing all this down feverishly. And at some point they said, oh, by the way, you got to switch wives. And they were both like, what? And they're like, yeah, that would be a good idea. If you switch wives, that would make us happy. Right. And so they do. And at that point, I am certain that John Dee knew he was dealing with something that wasn't of the Lord. Right. Yeah. At least not ours, at least not the Lord Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah. And so he was dealing with something. And I truly believe the veil was so thin from them constant channeling. This is 8 years of work, and multiple times Edward Kelly, because everybody says he's a fraud. He was a liar. He'd been caught for like forging documents and they cut his ears in half and stuff. So he was a known fraudster, but the thing is he tried to quit this like 10 different times, and he tried to leave. And every time he would leave, like he would feel like sharp pains in his guts, like swords and knives and all this crazy stuff. So he'd go back. And then one time they said, you got to get married. And he said, I don't want to get married. And a sword came out of the book and was stabbing him. And John Dee like visualized this. Okay. So I mean, they were just flipping out, and he was so scared. He was like, okay, I'll get married. He hated his wife. He hated her. And so he had no problem with this wife swapping business, but there was a big problem because John Dee was quite old. He was like in his late 70s when this is going on. And Edward Kelly's like a young man. He was like in his 30s or 40s. And so his wife, John Dee's wife, is like in her late 20s, if I remember correctly. And she gets pregnant. And he ends up raising that man's child for the rest of his life. Yeah. And so it busted up their friendship, obviously. Like it didn't go well. Yeah. So he was actually and honestly, what his workings did, even though they tried to get rid of him, one time they burned him because they were afraid when King James took over, because King James, like the Bible King James, he wasn't having this. He was burning people. And so they were terrified. They were kind of like, oh my gosh, we got to hide this. And the angel said, don't worry, burn it all. And then the next like couple of months later, they found everything under a tree, all completely intact. It was like nothing had happened to it. And so, I mean, it was wild. They kept going, like I said, for years on years. And it probably, he died in obscurity, honestly. He actually suffered a lot and lost almost all of his children, I think, but one. He lost his wife, like to the plague, all this horrible stuff. He lived till he was old, which was kind of rare back then. And he died without much notable, like other than being a mathematician. None of this stuff was even cared about till he had passed. And then a guy with the last name Cotton, I can't remember the first name, found his works, and a maid was like burning it to start like fires and stuff, probably toilet paper, who even knows? Like it was in shreds, and he's like, stop, like, what are you doing? And so that's how his workings got to us. But it's a whole language. They said if you tried to like fake it, it's a true language to this day. And you can actually recreate. I don't recommend this, but you can go look at the table and everything. It's like a huge Ouija board. It's like the Ouija board of Ouija boards. And it has like archangels and just different things. I mean, and then you have to have like wax seals. It was very complicated. You have to build furniture for this. And, there's no way that they could have faked this language. It looks like Egyptian hieroglyphics. That's how difficult it is. Like this Edward Kelly, even if he was a shyster, like he probably wasn't that smart. This is a language that works today. I mean, he created a whole language by himself. I don't think he did.
Yeah.
And so funny thing is, okay, John Dee's work becomes many religions. This goes clear out because they say that John Dee was very involved in the Knights of Pythias and these kind of things. So they think he was also Rosicrucian. So all these things go out into multiple religions. And then think about the future. Okay, Muhammad. What happened with Muhammad? He channeled angels, right? Gabriel. And he would have these fits and pass out and then wake up and tell the guys, because he didn't write things down. They were a nonverbal people until later, but he had two people that had to memorize everything he said, stand right with him. So he would tell them, and then this would all become what later? A religion. But there was a cost. What was it? Polygamy and how they treat women. So that was weird. So then go forward a little bit later, we got Crowley. And what did he do? He channeled Awas. And Awas told him, hey, write this down. Became the Book of the Law, which became Thelema. Okay, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, they're out in the desert doing the Babylon workings. And that's why they call it the workings, because this was the Enochian workings. See, same thing. This was what they were practicing, was John Dee's stuff. They channeled. What happens? Write this stuff down. And L. Ron Hubbard goes and writes it down. It becomes Scientology. And same thing with good old Joseph Smith. He was told by an angel to write all this down after he had a fit and passed out, just like Muhammad. And he woke up and he wrote it down. And then it becomes the Book of Mormon. But they all have a sexual cost. John Dee's was wife swapping. Edward Kelly had to do his wife and blah, blah, blah. Then we got Muhammad with the polygamy stuff. We got Joseph Smith with the polygamy stuff. Aleister Crowley did everything. I mean, there was nothing he wouldn't do. And then we've got even like, what's the other one? Scientology. They, with the Babylon workings, they had to masturbate in front of each other out in the desert. That's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And it was like for days. It wasn't quick. And they channeled things, and they believe that they opened portals quite similar to what John Dee did. I mean, he saw, I think, upwards of 32 angels. Joseph Smith said he saw 27, including dead people. Like, this is all pretty dark. I mean, if you get to the root of these things, they're not of light. Like, God would never come down and say, I think you should do his wife.
Yeah, no.
Man. I don't think that's very good. Yeah. So that's why I think that it led me to where I was. And then the whole thing is as I studied more, I started seeing abraxas come up all the time. Well, Joseph Smith's mother, she wrote in her own hand, and I have a picture of this. I should just put it on my Instagram so people can find it easy. But she speaks about the house of Abrak and worshiping the house of Abrak and drawing magic circles and soothsaying and treasure digging. And they were known to be this kind of magical family. And she was the first generation that was born here. Her father was Scotland. And so it makes so much sense because of the Magus. She would have knowledge, she would have certain knowledge. And they said she was a healer. And so I'm just saying, I think that he was exposed. They try to play it like, oh, he was a dumb farm boy and he couldn't even write a letter. Yeah. And no. His brother went to Dartmouth. You never hear that at church. Let me tell you, they try to play that dumb farm boy thing a lot. Wow. Because it excludes them, from a lot. And when I say they channeled, they had to use either a peepstone, or like with John Dee, they used a scrying mirror, which was made of obsidian. Nostradamus did it with water. Like, this is not anything new. This is something that happens in the occult circles, but not in normal church stuff. So the fact that they've made a whole religion on all these things is what is concerning. And like I said, they openly spoke of the house of Abraxas, abracadabra. All of this comes from that. And so the one thing Abraxas is, and this made a whole lot of sense to me after I studied, is he's a necromancer. And what does necromancy give to the person? I mean, of course, it gives the god, just like channeling from the Super Bowl we just watched. Why do they do these esoteric things? Because it gives them what? Gives them energy, right? It's like feeding them. Yeah. So the same stuff for Abraxas. However, what does it give to the person doing it? Because there has to be an exchange. It gives them power, knowledge, and ability to see in the future. What was Joseph Smith and every single president of the church called? Prophet, seer, and revelator. Wow. That's where they're getting it from. And on the top of every temple is a gold metal statue or little spires. And I'm certain they are channeling that energy. I'm certain.
Super interesting.
Yes,
wow.
It's very creepy.
I've learned a lot so far. I had no idea. Wow.
Yes. Most Mormons don't even know this. I did not know this. And there's a lot of other stories. Joseph Smith, he was a Mason. He was a known Mason. Let me tell you his brother's name, Hiram, like Hiram Abiff. I mean, come on, people. So, it's interesting that his brother died right before he got the plates from the angel. Well, then the angel had told him, hey, I need you to bring your brother when you come next time. Well, funny thing is, can't, because he's dead. And so they were trying to figure out what to do. And so his dad runs a newspaper article. This is real. Anybody can look this up in the actual newspaper saying, this is my summation. Hey, we're going to dig up our son. So if you see us digging up our son, we're checking on him because you people think we moved him or did something bad, but we didn't. And we're going to prove it because we're going to dig him up. Okay. What? Why would you do that? Yeah. And so they ran it 6 different times and they dug him up to make sure he was okay. Right. So the big joke in Mormonism is that his brother Alvin gave a hand in helping with Mormonism. Ha ha ha.
Wow.
Because they think maybe they took his hand.
Yeah. Man. When you're doing this research and you're starting to learn and unfold all this, was you still involved in the Mormonism? Or was you
No,
out?
I was out because I never would have studied this had I been in, because they came out. See, what really fouled everything up for the Mormons is the internet. So before the internet, they could tell us, no, Joseph Smith was never a polygamist. When I grew up and I was small, Joseph Smith was not a polygamist. Now it's well known that Joseph Smith was a polygamist. And Joseph wasn't a Mason, but it's now well known. If you put in Mormons and Masons in YouTube, it will come up with a cute little video from the church that says, so you're wondering if we're Masons? And they have like a little 10-minute skit about like, oh yeah, well, we do the real Masonry that's actually better because God gave it to us. And so they've got all these little ways around it now. But when I was coming up, they could tell you whatever they wanted. I mean, we didn't know about this magical hat. I was always told, and I'm going to make new slides because I want to show people this, about a Urim and Thummim, which is very similar to a Masonic apparatus as well, with a breastplate and spectacles. And it's very Masonic. And he said he translated with that. But then as I got older, there was all these jokes on the internet with Joseph Smith's head in a top hat and a stone in there. And I thought, why are they making these lies up? This is bad. They're just lying. And you would just think that it was lies because they could get away with that back then. Yeah. But then the internet hit. And so they came out with a whole bunch of slogans and they got very Jehovah's Witnessy. They were like, okay, if you have questions, meet with your bishop, or you need to go look on LDS.org or Mormon.com or whatever. So only look at our information. Don't Google. Don't do that.
Research. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Don't do your own research. Heaven's sakes. We know how that goes. Right.
Yeah.
And so we were told like, this is anti-Mormon propaganda. And so we didn't do that because you were a bad Mormon if you did that. You don't want to be a bad Mormon. You don't want to have your stuff taken away. You don't want to feel less than. You're one of the elites of the church. You're like, you've been through the temple. You're special. So you don't. And they even came out with slogans like, don't doubt your doubts. Don't doubt your faith. Like this was real. That was one of their slogans. Yeah. And so it got like wild, and I had already been out, but trying to tell other people about it is just almost impossible. They just look at you like, oh, you're crazy, you know.
Does every Mormon go through the temple, or is there Mormons out there that don't?
There are plenty that can't, because here's the thing. You can't drink coffee. You can't drink tea. You can't, no tea, no black tea. You can drink herbal tea. Back in the day, that was originally given as no hot drinks, but then they make hot cocoa. They manufacture hot cocoa. It's not about caffeine and it's not about health, because they own big shares in Coca-Cola, and they also own a big share in pharmaceuticals. Wow. And so, you know, you can't do that. So you got to be good there. You can't smoke. You can't drink. You can't watch porn, these are not bad rules per se. I mean, come on, you know, you can't cheat on your wife or your husband. You have to do the 10 commandments, and you have to pay your tithing, but your tithing is 10%. And when I say 10%, I mean, at the end of the year, when you get your W-2s, you go and sign up for tithing settlement with your bishop. And he takes your W-2s and he says, now, Heidi, you only paid this much money and your gross income was this much money. You owe us a negative deficit of $750, whatever it is, and you need to pay it, or you can't go back to the temple until you do. Yeah. It's very serious. It's all very, very serious. It's like taxes. It's like taxes.
Yeah.
And so there's no just like estimate or I felt like I should do this much. No, 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 no. And then if you can't pay it, I one time had to be a janitor and scrub toilets in the church.
Wow.
To work it off.
Wow. So after you've gone through the temple and you've found out more and you're getting back to normal life, married life in this religion, what was life like then? What was you thinking not right, or was you?
Yeah, I was so I lost my family when this happened. So it was really a hard time for me because my husband and I got married at that time, and he had accidentally told his parents that I'm an apostate. Apostate means I left the church with full knowledge. Not like him. He is an apostate, but he's kind of not because he doesn't know what he does, right? Because he didn't go to the temple, but I do. So the only place that outer darkness is kind of like our hell where you're cut off from everything and you're cut off from the presence of the Lord, is for murderers and apostates. And you swear blood oaths in the temple that you'll never speak of these things that I'm telling you right now. And you used to do this slicing of your throat or spilling of your bowels, like an example like that. You pledge that, not really, but like, a pledge. And now they don't do that anymore either because that scared everybody.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, they quit that. And so there's a laundry list of things that they quit doing, but that was one. And so at that time, I was losing my family. I was an apostate. My husband's family did not like me because I'm an apostate. I ended up having my grandma sue me. She tried to take my kids away. She filed CPS on me and filed false charges against me and made almost everyone in my family hate me. So, because I wouldn't go back. Yeah.
And you told your family that you was coming out of the religion.
Oh yeah. It didn't go well. Yeah. Cause every uncle, aunt, great uncle, all of them other than my dad's side, they were all engulfed in this religion.
Yeah.
They were not happy with me. And then on top of it, my grandma told everyone like, oh, she stole from me. Oh, she beats her kids, all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Why would you tell people this stuff? And she came after me with a vengeance. She was not happy. And so it got really, 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 really difficult. But as far as me and my husband, it was a hard time for the first, I want to say like 15 months, because I was still trying to break off these weird oaths that I took in the temple. You know how the Bible says, take no oaths, right? And swear no oath to no one, because let your eyes be eyes and your nays be nays, but don't do that. That's like a summary. But I had done that and I didn't know what I had done. So I felt like I was in a cycle of repentance. And also I was going in through my house trying to figure out what was occultic from this religion, like getting things out of my house. And I really struggled for a while. And also anybody that's a Christian can tell you, unless she became a Christian as a child, I don't believe I was a true Christian when I was in there, because I don't think their Jesus is the same Jesus. I don't. They believe that the Holy Ghost is separate. They believe that Jesus was formed just like any other man, like by sex. They believe that you can ascend and get your own planet and all this crazy stuff that they'll lie about now. But it sounds very much like ascended masters if you put two and two together, really. And I'm certain he got a copy of the Kabbalah sometime in his life. But long story short, I had to break all that off, and it wasn't going very well. We had a very hard life during that time. Anybody, like I said, that's turned to Christianity and got baptized, they think that's going to be like the time in your life where you're really blessed. It is, but it's almost everyone's Job time, because you're going to get faced with some hard things, because God allows Satan to try us. I mean, we know that from the story of Job. And I was really going through it. And I almost just didn't believe in anything anymore. I mean, I never gave up 100%, but it was rough because I was getting hit from, I mean, I'm like sick with cancer and going to court and CPS and all this stuff. And I just thought, wow, what is happening here? And then I got pregnant, and not that that's a bad thing, but I was kind of old and I'd had all these medical problems and I was scared she wasn't going to be okay. And she's great. And she's a blessing. And that's amazing. And her name is Faith for that reason.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so we had our hardships, but it panned out in the end. In the end, if you hold really true, and I don't go to any church, listen, the Bible, this is my church right here. This talking to people and this book, the Bible, that's it. You don't need any man in between you and God. It says so. People need to understand that it's a lot easier than people make it seem. They want it to be hard because they don't want you to do it. Simple. It's simple to keep people away from God because they want you to go through 70 hoops and wear weird underwear and all this other stuff. You know, they want it to be difficult. They want it to be a challenge. And that's not God.
And it shouldn't be. Yeah. It shouldn't be a challenge.
That's not how it is.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't buy it. I don't buy that. I know that my spirit now is so much more alive than when I was doing all the checked boxes, right? I had a big list of things to make me a good person, and I wasn't that good of a person. I mean, I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't great either. I was doing it with a bad heart. Like I didn't want to do it. I was there because I had to be.
You knew it wasn't right.
I paid it because I had to. Yeah, I didn't want to do it. And God even says, by the way, about tithing, that you shouldn't give unless you want to give in your heart. That's a literal scripture. And he doesn't want your like money if it's like some grunty, like, here you go. He doesn't want that, you know?
Yeah.
He doesn't like stuff like that. And he wouldn't force. Force is never God. That's the devil. And Derek Prince covers that really good. And I really absorbed myself in Derek Prince because I knew one thing. He might be a pastor, and I think he's maybe Pentecostal, but I didn't care what he was affiliated with. But I knew this. He was dead, so it didn't matter. Like he wasn't trying to do anything. You know, he's gone. And I mean, so that's great. I'm going to learn as much as I can. And I just engulfed myself with the studies and stuff like that. And so it really helped. And I did lose my daughter at this time. Like she didn't die, but she estranged from me. I haven't seen her in 5 years. And I have a grandbaby that I never met. It was rough. I'm not going to lie. We lost my brother. My brother died. It was bad. And we just kept going through it. And I'll tell you, that's why my podcast is called Unfiltered, because you've spoke with me for long enough to get why there, and rise, because you can rise above. Like it doesn't really matter if something's hard or bad or whatever you went through, you know, you just got to use it for something better, really, whatever it is. It could be really bad and you could help someone else. That's what we're supposed to do. That's church. You know, love people, help people,
for sure.
Want to help people, do it with a good heart. Stop being like that, you know?
Yeah.
And your life will get better, to be honest. So that was where I went with that.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job. Your podcast is awesome. Thank
you so much.
Can I ask you how long it took you to break away from, so after you've gone through the ceremony and stuff like that, how long did it take you to go, I'm out?
I stayed until I was 34, and I was, so 1996, I was 20, 14 years.
Wow.
And I stayed. Yep. And I didn't like it. And I quit doing the sealing I would do where the marriages were, because I felt like that was a little better. But like the other part I didn't like, and I wouldn't do it. And my grandma was always trying to get me to do it. And I would say, I don't want to do it. And she was always funny with me about it and kind of trying to encourage me. But I just had a feeling in my heart that wasn't the best. And it makes you wonder, like if there's necromancy involved and you're looking in mirrors and you know about the occult, what are you channeling into yourself? when you are putting Masonic underwear nearest to your openings of your body, like you're talking about the most private areas, period. And if you've ever read Crowley, there's a whole world about your butt and all this stuff. So it's a whole thing. So, it makes you wonder, like, what were they doing? Not that we would feel anything, just the entities. There's real things out there. You do a paranormal podcast. Like, I'm sorry to say, there's a lot of strange things.
100%.
And yeah, the church is very involved in a lot of weird studies and their money goes to weird places. And in 2020, they took a stand to tell every member to get the cure for the thing that will never go away, including children. Yeah. And that is just something that you cannot do. I'm sorry. You don't know anyone's past history. You don't know what's good for them or bad for them. You don't know what they're allergic to. You don't know. And as a nurse, I knew right away that something is wrong here. And that was what kind of led me into like, nope, I'm not participating in any of this. Yeah. And I never did. I didn't do any of it. Not give one, not have one. I just felt weird about it. And people should trust their instincts. Like, really, it's usually from something better than your instinct. It's not usually you.
Yeah, for sure.
But that church is involved. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
You're very brave to speak out and talk about this stuff.
It's kind of a anxiety driven. That's why I did that video I told you about that I got in trouble about, because there was something back in the olden days that was Danites. The Danites were an army of just Mormons that would like take care of other Mormons, like an enforcer squad, and they would kill people for this. There were actual blood atonement murders because some things the LDS church still feels this. Now they don't practice it anymore, but they do say there are some sins that you cannot have Jesus atone for, that you have to atone for with your own blood. And that's very interesting. And then, it has to be, we were one of the last states to get rid of firing squads, which was also very interesting, I felt, because the first murder that ever happened on earth, the blood spilled onto the ground. It speaks about this with Cain and Abel, that Abel's blood soaked into the ground, right? And the blood was spilled. The same thing happens true for the blood atonement murders of the Mormons. They slice across and let the blood spill onto the ground. There's something with that, and I'm still searching it, but I'm telling you, it's not normal. I mean, obviously, they say they don't have anything to do with any of that anymore, by the way. And that they feel that, no, I'm sure, I don't know what they really do, but there is a certain thing called the second anointing. And the second anointing is one step further than what I told you about with the endowments. And it's only given to high up members of the church, like the quorum of the 12 and the quorum of the 70, always men, but it absolves them from anything keeping them from heaven. So even if they murder someone, they can go to heaven because they have the second anointing. It's like a surefire into heaven for them. Even if they were to hurt children or do anything horrible. It makes you wonder why. Why would they need that if they don't practice any of those things anymore? Why would they need that?
Yeah. Man. Have you?
And if you guys, did you catch my episode about the underground tunnels in Salt Lake?
But I'm going to.
That one you got to watch because there's a whole grid and it makes you wonder why it goes directly to the temple.
Underground tunnels
to the temple.
Oh, wow.
And they admit it. There's pictures and everything. They say it's so that the prophet doesn't get mobbed in the street. And like superstars use them and stuff too that don't go to it goes other places, but the temple is one. Yes. It's so weird.
Have you had any, do you get a lot of pushback with the podcast and stuff like that? Do you get people coming at you?
Not from other places, but here, if somebody says, "Oh, you do a podcast? What do you do?" I'm like, "Oh no." And I always just say, "Well, are you LDS?" And if they say yes, I say, "You probably wouldn't like it." I don't really go into it. I don't give them the name of the podcast because I don't want to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to destroy someone and blackpill them like that. That's not nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about like, the world we live in with controversies or anything else, you don't need to destroy someone's psyche. It's not good. So I don't do that. But I do get a lot of pushback from like, my kid doesn't have any neighbors in the neighborhood that can really play. People know that we're not Mormon. And that's a bigger thing than the fact that I do a podcast. The fact that I'm an apostate is bigger.
Wow.
And they know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because remember, I'm damned. I'm going to outer darkness. Yeah. And his parents, my husband's parents, are just like that too. And I just have to, I'm always very kind with them. I don't think it's personal. I don't think they hate me as a person. I just think they hate that situation, because they don't want their son with somebody that's damned, even though he's been out for a long time, way longer than I was. Yeah. He's the one that opened my eyes. He black-pilled me. Him and my mother. My mother had gotten out, and I remember my mom and my grandma would laugh at her, and she was nasty and like would say, "Oh, you're going to the rock and roll Jesus church," because it was just a born again church, and they would sing and have like a band. Well, Mormons don't do that. It's very quiet, Yeah. And somber. They sing, but they're hymns and they're, it's church. And they don't do all that. And so my mom would get made fun of by my grandma. And I have to say this is, God bless me in a wonderful way, because my mom got out and my brother got out before he died. He was baptized, and so was his daughter, and all of my children are out, as well as myself and my husband. So that's pretty cool coming from what I came from, Yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. Yeah. And I do worry. My mom worries because like I said, that's my name. And she gets like stressed out. She's like, "Oh my gosh, what if they come and get you?" And blah, blah. I'm like, "Mom, listen, I put it out on my podcast all the time that mental health wise, I'm fine. And I would never, ever want to not be here, and all this." I'm like, I don't think they're going to mess with somebody that's just a lower level. They're just going to be like, "Oh, she's crazy." She's just a crazy lady. But who knows? It's a little nerve wracking. I won't lie.
I bet it is. How far are you away from like the temple now?
Salt Lake 20. Oh, well, there's the Salt Lake temple I'm about 22 miles from, but there is a temple 4 miles from my house. There's temples all over.
Man.
There's a temple 10 miles from my house to the north, 22 miles to the south, 15 miles to the south, and 4 miles to the south. They have them everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have mold at almost every little town to the next big town has them now. And it never used to be that way. And so it's actually built on my family's haunted ground over there.
Oh,
they had this weird, it was a weird haunted house. And my grandma told me about it. And they demolished it long ago, and no one would buy this land because everyone knew the story. It was like poltergeist haunted, not just a little bit, like full on poltergeist stuff going on. These brothers had hid their money inside the house, and they were like old misers. Well, rats had eaten it or it got stolen. They weren't really sure which, but they were looking for the money a lot. And then eventually they died and never found it. They tore that place apart, never found it. My grandma swears like rats ate it or something. And then, because it wasn't coin, and she said they lived there for a few months and they were the heck out of there. And not just my grandma, but my mom told me stories about beds being thrown against the wall, cereal being thrown all over, like wild. And so no one would live there. They demolished that house and no one would live there or buy that land. And now the temple's on it.
Wow.
Oh, it makes me laugh that's, but that's really the only place that they would have had a big enough plot to like, because this town is pretty bought up. It was like settled a long time ago. My family was one of the original settlers here. So it was kind of funny, but you don't get, it's not well reception. If you go anywhere, even if I wasn't an apostate, say I just told people, "Oh, I'm just a Christian, a born again Christian," they would say, "Oh," they don't say anything mean or nasty, but especially, and I have tattoos. And they look at you like Bad one, that one. They're
Really?
very funny. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you ever
We
think
also have a
about,
gay daughter. So
yeah,
it's a whole we're like the bad family,
man,
whatever.
that's crazy though. It's crazy that
I
anyone
mean,
should feel like that anywhere.
yeah,
But it
yeah. And
really is.
people shouldn't, I mean, okay, let's be honest here. What does the Bible say? Even if you have a gay child, even if you have a sinner child, even if your neighbor is an apostate and you think they're going to hell, how are you really supposed to treat them? We're not supposed to treat each other like that.
No, not
Come
at
on
all.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're supposed to. What was the one thing Jesus Christ said after he came back and said it all been hung on the cross, right? He wanted us to do one thing, just one. It was love one another. And we can't figure out how to do it.
100%. Yeah. Yeah,
And if
man.
we did, there would be an unstoppable, an
Yeah.
unbreachable amount of power in our
Yeah.
wake. We would just rail these people over that
100%.
think they
Yeah.
rule.
Even if most people had that
half,
love.
even
Yeah.
half.
Even if 100%, it would be the
Yeah.
world would be a different place.
Completely. And it's sad that they constantly divide us.
Yeah.
It's constant.
That's done on I think
If
that's done on
it's-
purpose.
yeah.
Because they don't want us
Oh
to
no,
unite.
100,
They don't want us to
100%.
love
There's
and
there's
yeah.
way more of us than there is them, and
Yeah.
I believe, and I don't know how, much you want to get into tonight, but I do believe that class, and I don't know if you've heard of the serpent seed, conclusion there, but there's a very compelling argument. Ollie Siadatan, Siadatan. Okay. Think Again Productions. Watch that. Thinkagainproductions.com. He put out a very compelling clip movie, basically like a documentary. And he explains how possibly, now I don't know if this is it or I have one other theory, that the seed of the serpent, when he says he was going to put indemnity in between the woman, and it was after there'd already been an encounter with the serpent. Okay. So a lot of people believe in this serpent seed theory where Cain was actually Lucifer's and Abel was Adam's. And that they believe that that is where the lizard, quote unquote, lizard people come from. But also it could just be Nephilim, giant DNA that got mixed in later with the whole Genesis 6. And I love Gary Wayne, Ryan Peterson, all those guys, they do such a good job with this. I've interviewed Ryan. Gary will be on in 2 weeks, which is like
Awesome.
my huge interview. Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, it took me months, but I mean, I was so shook when he finally did it. But I mean,
That's cool.
it's been a wild ride. And Ramsey, I did William Ramsey, and that one was really good too. But these kind of things that they explain, I think that it makes so much sense because you have to understand what was the whole Bible about. People miss the point. Jesus was here doing what? Every couple minutes, he's casting out, casting out, casting out. If that wasn't real, then what's the Bible about? I don't know. Because there was obviously a lot of problems there. And then even with the part where and this part kind of is weird. This is just a conjecture, of course. When he went up to the guy that was like possessed and he sent the demons into the pigs, okay? And they said, "We are legion." What is the thing that people want to be called now? They, them, we. That's interesting. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
I see mental illness, and there is true mental illness. I work I'm a mental health nurse. I've seen true mental illness where you can see a difference between that and possession. And I will tell you, there are people that I believe are 100% overtaken with something because they aren't normal. And if you look at Ted Bundy, he's a great example. We just wrapped up an issue on him on my Patreon on blood atonement. And I'll tell you what, they say he had the most crystal blue eyes, but when he'd get weird, they would turn black. And there are pictures of him with the blackest eyes you'll ever see.
Wow.
It's creepy.
That is
and it's
creepy.
Worth a Google.
Wow.
Yeah, he is creepy.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they would say, even his brother said something would come over him and he would not be the same person. Now, do I think that can happen to just normal people that have Jesus? No. Do I think they can be tortured? Yes. Tormentors. But we are a bright light. You have to understand, like, we are a bright light in a dark desert. What does it say that they do? They wander the desert looking for a place to rest. They can't get rest. They can't go anywhere because the sons of perdition, these spirits that can't go anywhere from being, because, you know, the Nephilim are not really here. You know, the angels fell, they're everlasting and they're stuck here. But their seed, their offspring are disembodied at this point and they have nowhere to go. Do I think that that's something curious? You bet. I think the alien agenda and the AI agenda is going to link to this. I mean, if they can prime our bodies to be receptors for something like that, what does it do? It gives them a place to rest.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
if they can get our consciousness out of the way, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you get people that will talk about this. Yes, like multiple personality cases, different things like that talk about this. And it's very curious, you know?
For sure.
I can't prove any of it for sure, but it's a strange conjecture. Yeah.
It's interesting though. Scary. Yeah. Interesting.
Scary. I don't think it can just happen. I think you have to be doing something dark.
Yeah.
Do I think they can come and bother you? Yeah, but we have Jesus Christ is more powerful and all of that. And we have, you know, the ability. That's what ticks them off so bad is we have the ability to squash snake and scorpions' heads, right? So they don't like that. Also, we get to judge them someday. You know, it says that man will judge the fallen at some point. And so, you know, there's that. I would be ticked off too if I was the older brother and my younger brother was going to come judge me, especially where he wasn't as magnificent as I thought I was, you know. But I mean, people only want to study certain books and they just want to go with the easy one, not read like Jasher and, you know, all these other books that really get into it, right? Like Genesis and the whole Genesis 6 thing. People they gloss over that so fast, you know, or the book of Enoch, go through. It's way more opened up in these other books that they've taken out. Well, that wasn't how it was created.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't how it was compiled. Yeah. And so we have to really do our due diligence as Christians. And even if you choose not to believe it, you should still be aware. You should still know enough at least to say, okay, I understand. Even if you think it's a total load of crap, you know, well, at least you did your due diligence. Half the people won't even read the regular Bible. Try and get that to happen. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not being a Bible thumper, but I'm just saying if you want power in your life or if you want knowledge, that's a really good place to start. You know, we can do conspiracy podcasts or biblical podcasts all day, but the answers are right there. I mean, I don't know. You can go slow, 1 or 2 verses a day, put your armor on, battle up, because these times, I'm telling you, I've never thought I would live to see the times we are in right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
it's crazy times.
Oh yeah.
We
got mattresses being pulled out of holes in New York and you know, some weird stuff going on. We had, you know, apparently Nephilim in Florida, which was a load of crap, but it's also revelation of the method. We have to understand people. I kind of got a lot of flack because I said to somebody yesterday, did you see that halftime show? That was so occult. And they said, why would you watch that? That's bad. And I said, because you have to know. And they said, no, I don't want to know that stuff. And I said, yeah, but then you can't understand what they're doing. If you don't know the game plan, like if you want to know what your enemy, you can't. If you want to win football or hockey or any sport, what do? You watch their plays.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You're not going to win anything and I'm not saying you have to do what I did and really deep dive the occult. I don't think that's meant for everyone. I think that was something I was told to do so I could connect the dots with Joseph Smith. That's all. You know.
Yeah.
If I was not an ex-Mormon, maybe I would not need that knowledge. Like maybe that wouldn't be safe for me. But obviously it played right into it. So I feel like it was like kind of like, you need this. You need to understand what happened to you.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was asking. Well, what happened to me?
Yeah.
What did I do? What oaths did I take and how do I break them? Show me that. And I got my answer. And my life did change. My life changed. Who I am today is no one that you would have known back then.
Yeah.
I was not, I watched the Kardashians and whatever, I was silly. I mean, I could care less. I was doing my hair and makeup, and not that I don't now, but things didn't mean a whole lot to me then. It wasn't the same thing. And the stuff I did, even with my kids, it was different. It was more like, oh, we got to do this because we got to look the best at church. We got to be this. We got to be that. It was very keep up with the Jones, do this, do that. Now I'm nothing like that. I'm like totally different person. I'm like, oh, you don't like me? Cool.
Yeah. That's the best way to be.
I don't care. Yeah.
That's the best way to be.
And I'll still be nice. That's fine. I don't have to be nasty. That's not going to get you anywhere. Like, okay, now you feel better.
Do you ever think about leaving the state that you're in, moving somewhere else, and sort of
every day
getting away from it?
Here. I don't belong here. I don't feel like I belong here. Everybody that I meet that's not from here says, you don't seem like you're from here. And I say, I know, but the one thing is my older daughter, she's 24, his son, he's having a baby in April. They're all planted. We're stuck here unless we don't want to grow up with our grandbabies. And I very much want to grow up with my grandbabies.
Yeah.
And I can't go anywhere until my son's 18 because his father's here, and I would never take my son from his dad, ever. Like, that's just not. Dads are really important. I don't know who doesn't know that by now, but I think as we see the culture that we have at this point, involve your dads in your children's lives as long as they're safe people.
Yeah. 100%.
Not like my stepdad. Yeah. Not like that dad.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Even my real dad, he was a very shady character. He went to prison. He had a Ponzi scheme even when he died. He would have gone to prison again if he hadn't died.
Oh, wow.
But, they came after his estate, everything. It was that bad. He was very smart, but too smart for his own well-being, right?
Yeah.
By the way, the IRS gets you even if you're dead.
Yeah, they still come.
Yeah, they came. Yes.
Wow.
But my dad was a great person. It wasn't like a character flaw really, other than he would get in these things and he would believe them. And I always was like, that sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, it's totally fine. It's totally legit. And I'm like, I don't think so. And I think maybe he wanted to believe, but I mean, how much did he know versus I don't know. But had she kept me from him, I would have been very upset. He was a great person. Minus his issues with money stuff, like he was awesome,
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to be careful just throwing people away, because I was thrown away, and
100%.
It's really sad and hard.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. And I do think if it is your parents, unless you have a really good reason, you're going to have some answering to do, because it is a commandment. It's the only commandment with a promise.
Yeah.
And so it says, honor your mother and father, and you will be good all the days of your life. It is the only one that has like a little sub, like, and blah, blah, blah. The rest are just like, don't do that. Don't steal. Don't kill people. Like, but it doesn't say anything else. And that one comes with a promise. And I think a lot of times nowadays people are so harsh on everything, but especially parents, like, well, you did this wrong and you did that wrong and you spanked me and you were mean, or you yelled at me, and that's abuse, or you're a narcissist. I hear that. You're toxic. You're this, you're that. I hear those words thrown around so much. You guys need to know everybody's a little bit narcissistic. Everybody's a little bit toxic. Get somebody on the wrong day, and the best, most wonderful person will be a little bit toxic.
Yeah.
Now, 100%. Am I saying I don't line up for constant abuse either, for sure. I understand there's a point where you're like, okay, probably not, I mean, my stepdad that I mentioned, I'm not in contact with him. We've tried that. It's not good. It's still not good. It's fine. But if it's your actual parents, even if they annoy you terribly, whatever, I mean, you don't have to go over there all the time. Yeah. Just
they're important. Yeah.
They really are. And our history is something that they can take from us with the older generation. If they make the older generation disappear, all of history can be changed in 100 years.
Yeah.
Every single bit.
Yeah.
And they do it all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm a believer in that.
Yes. Yes.
Heidi,
history is his story.
Yeah.
Yes. The winner. 100%. The winner. Yes.
Heidi, I've loved talking to you tonight. Super interesting.
This was so fun.
You've been through a heck of a lot of tough times, but you've come through, and you're doing a great job now. And it's very brave of you to talk about this topic, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous to talk about this stuff as well.
It's secret. Yeah. It's secret. It's very much frowned upon, and it's not a good thing, with most situations. But at the end of the day, this is the one thing I wished I had someone tell me is, okay, if you're going to be a Freemason, you go to a Freemason lodge. You know what you're doing. You may not know all of the parts of it. You may not know what you're going to have to do for the next level or whatever, but an idea of you're going to be required X, Y, Z. Same thing with the OTO. Same thing with most secret societies. They kind of let you know, well, hey, this is going to be hard or weird or whatever. You know what's coming at you. With Mormonism, no one does that. You think that you are doing something completely for God and completely innocent and good, and it isn't. It's not what they say. It's Masonic, and they need to start saying, hey, we're a Masonic religion. And if you come to be an LDS person and you go to the top, you're going to be a Mason. And this is what we do. And if they did that, I would probably shut up, because it's unfair. They lied. So now they get this, because you don't really want to scorn women.
Well, it's super brave of you to speak out. And
thank you.
Yeah, I recommend your podcast. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and your show?
Yes, absolutely. I am at the Unfiltered Rise. I am everywhere podcasts are served. I do have a Patreon. We have an exclusive Blood Atonement series there, including Mormons, mayhem, and murder. So they're all murderers that are Mormons. So that's kind of fun. We've even got some obscure ones that most people don't know about, but we do the big hitters too, like Ted Bundy and all that. So it's kind of fun. And that one will not be released other than on Patreon. So if you want more, hit us there, but I'll never cut my regular episodes. So I'll just have those normal. So awesome. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Thank you for coming on. I've loved talking to you. Awesome. Super interesting. Yes. Hopefully the first of many conversations. Yeah, I think there's more we can talk about going forward.
Yes. I would love to share my Minerva story with you.
Yeah, we're going to do that
one's
soon.
Very interesting. Yes. I think your listeners would enjoy it.
Interesting.
Awesome.
Well, Heidi, thank you so much.
Yes.
Keep safe. Keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully I'll speak to you very soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's get freaky.
Something's in your room. You can't move. You can't speak. It's a horrible, horrible feeling.
You're looking out into the darkness, and then you see a figure, but it's darker than the darkness.
I just get this really creepy feeling, and I see this shadowy, demon-looking figure in the front seat of the car.
She used to come into my room at night and stand right by my bed, and I just was petrified.
I remember I saw something fly by my bedroom window. We heard the bathroom door shut. So then we looked out my bedroom window down the hallway, and the bathroom door was wide open.
So we came around the bend and we saw eye shine. This thing stood up. I mean, it stood up, and it had high pointed ears. It had a snout, had a long arm, and it grabbed the deer.